Good morning and welcome back. It is the 9th of September, Monday. This is CSC443, Network Forensics. And we want to spend a little bit of quality time to interpret what it is you captured in your first solution using your Kali Linux box. And if this is where I left it, well, it's not. I think our last trial was a natted version, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
It was a natted version. I've changed it back to bridged. And what I'd like you to do with yours is to change it back to bridged on yours. Does everybody have their laptop handy? Is everybody able to follow along this morning?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start my Kali box. And in short order. Now I just skipped a step or two that would be considered if I were in true forensic mode this morning on a Monday morning. What is it I woulda, coulda, shoulda done before I started up my Kali box? What is something I would have wanted to check? And I'll give you,
Check for updates.
yes, check for updates. And would you check for updates only with VirtualBox?
No, you would check it for Oracle as well.
You would check in Kali, you would check on, you would check in Kali, but before you got to Kali, before you even got to this screen, you would want, you're correct, you would want to check over here. Oh, it's not here, it's on this one. You would want to check in the VirtualBox to see if there's updates here. So before you start your Kali machine, you're going to want to check the VirtualBox manager to see if there's any updates available. And what do you notice about this screen right here? It's usually pretty snappy, isn't it? Did I lose everybody? Am I having a network problem this morning?
I see it.
If you are joining us with your own host and your own virtual machine, if you have the Oracle VirtualBox Manager open, if you wouldn't mind, go to the file menu and run check for updates yourself. See if you're getting the same kind of wrinkle here. So that's my first clue that, okay, Houston, we might have a problem. Might have a problem. But would that be the only place you would check for updates? Would that be the only, I don't want to scare you here. I clicked on tools. I'll click back on Kali.
No, it's taken a while for me too, actually.
Interesting.
Me too.
Interesting.
Maybe something on their side might be down. I don't know.
It could be that they're in the process of posting an update. So usually when I see stuff like this, now we haven't applied the updates, which means that if we're running our we're running our Kali Linux box, it's unlikely that we would corrupt the Kali Linux box if we simply shut it down. And one of the things that's really important when you're running updates for the VirtualBox platform is that you should probably not have any Kali machines running. So let's think about this. I have a type, a type 1 or a type 2? Did we talk about the different types of hypervisors?
I don't recall.
I don't think it was in this class because I know what you're talking about. I don't think it was in this class though.
Okay. Let's take a quick foray into our ACS Technology Virtual Laboratory. What you're seeing here is study guide for Module 1. And if you're using virtual machines for network forensic analysis, it's important to understand the distinctions between hypervisor types. So in a virtual machine environment, the business end of that virtual machine environment is a specialized piece of software, right? It's a translator, if you will. It's called a hypervisor. And in this instance, what you'll notice is that the hardware of the host basically doesn't have an operating system right over the hardware. Normally, when you're looking at a conceptual map of a computer system, you have hardware, and then you have operating system, and then you have software and applications and user up here. Does everybody understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So there are specific virtual machine environments. The hypervisor is so optimized and specialized that it takes a direct flight to the hardware. And it sits between the hardware and anything else above it. So virtual machines would present up here, and you would not see a hypervisor. If you see an operating system up here, it's because that's inside another virtual machine. So the virtual machines are out here. And this is the type of hypervisor that you would find in a virtual environment like VMware, or in I want to say Citrix. There's a couple of usually the type 1 hypervisors are found in data centers. There's another one that's open source. It's called Proxmox. And the hypervisor is based on a Linux kernel, but it's a type 1 hypervisor. Microsoft would tell you that if you install the server role of a hypervisor, and if you download, actually there's an ISO where you download hypervisor server, or Hyper-V, I'm sorry, Hyper-V server. When you run Hyper-V on a server platform, Microsoft likes to claim that it's a type 1 hypervisor. Now, we're working with a type 2 hypervisor. The hardware that you own right now, your host, is running a client operating system, not a server operating system or a server-based hypervisor. But essentially what you're running is your favorite flavor of operating system. And here is VirtualBox, which is essentially like any other application that's running on the host machine that accesses its hardware resources in and through the operating system, the host operating system. So it does not have a direct flight between the hardware and the virtual machine. Now, this is significant because if you have, let's pretend, a type 1 hypervisor, and then you have a Kali virtual machine running in a type 1 virtual machine environment, then the Kali machine has a direct flight through the hypervisor to the hardware. It's more of a direct path. It's more pure, if you will. In a type 2 hypervisor with VirtualBox or with VMware Fusion or VMware Workstation or QEMU or Hyper-V for a Windows client OS. And what do I mean? Everybody see this right here?
Yeah.
I have the professional version of Windows 11 installed on my laptop. And I have Hyper-V Manager, and that is the Windows equivalent of VirtualBox. It is a type 2 hypervisor environment. And that's significant when we're talking about the presentation of virtual machines and more importantly, the maintenance routines. Now, we could get into the weeds quite a bit, and I don't want to bore everybody on a Monday morning, but I will say this. We asked the question, where else would you worry about updates? Where else would you check for updates before you launch a hypervisor? And what you're going to say is, in a type 2 virtual machine environment, you're going to want to check with the operating system to make sure there are no updates there, in addition to the hypervisor. Now, in a type 1 virtual environment, this is what sits between the hardware and the virtual machine. So essentially, if you get an update here, you're one and done. I'm talking about maintaining the integrity and reliability of your virtual machines, right? Everybody still remembers, and it's not like you'd want to have a night. Does anybody have nightmares where you're supposed to be at an exam and you show up late and there's 5 minutes left in the exam and it's almost over and you don't have enough time to finish the exam? And then there's another nightmare that's common to human beings where you dream you're falling over a cliff. You're falling. Okay. And then there's a third one. There's a third one where everybody thinks that they don't have any clothes on. I'm not gonna get into psychology right now, but the thing is, you have to keep in mind these two types of virtual machine environments because you're more exposed to the wild cards, if you will, for maintenance in a type 2 hypervisor environment and less exposed to that in a type 1 hypervisor environment. So ideally, if you had a network forensic laboratory, you would want something like VMware or Proxmox or the server version of Hyper-V operating, where there's only a single set of updates you have to worry about. But there's another consideration that's important and relevant, and that has to do with the configuration of the network. Now, one of the things that you should have experienced, and did you get yours to clear? Now it says nothing to update. Mine says nothing to update.
Mine said that too.
Mine says failed.
Yeah, mine too. Mine gave me an error.
Yeah, I had a failure on mine. I had an error message on mine. So the prudent thing to do in this case would be to go to About VirtualBox and check the version. I have 7.0.20, and I'm going to close. And I'm going to minimize this. And actually, I'm going to shut down. I'll go ahead and shut down my virtual machine because one of the things that we want you to know is that when you're maintaining your network forensic capacity, you do not want to run updates on your hypervisor if there's a version you need to load while you have virtual machines running. That can end very badly. And again, that has to do with the translation that plays out. So as soon as I have my Kali environment, I can either go here and do you see the pop-up on my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can click shut down, and your mileage may vary. It may not shut down as easily, and that might be a telltale sign that you need to load something else when the machine is running. And we'll talk about guest additions in just a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and close my VirtualBox Manager. I'm just going to open up any browser window. And while I'm at it, since I'm a conscientious network forensic professional, I'm going to check on a Monday morning to see what else needs an update. Have we talked about Winget yet?
Yes.
Oh, it's so nice. I love Winget because essentially it's a one-stop shop, and you really have fewer things to go through. Although, since bugs and unintended misfires will derail things, one of your paranoid habits should be that you do things in different ways to check for the consistency of the same outcome. And eventually, along the way, you're going to find differences. And once again, the flashback to those nightmares, if you had any nightmares about intro to cyber or forensics, the phrase validate, certify, verify should be rattling around in the back of your brain somewhere. Now, this shows I need a Python update. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Speaking of updates, on your host, maintenance is often performed with PowerShell. Do we have any PowerShell fans here?
I think I have it installed.
Okay, the native PowerShell that's loaded with your Windows operating system is several versions old. There is a newer version of PowerShell that's a lot more reliable and stable. Okay. And one of the ways that you can get the newest version is to go to the Microsoft Update Catalog. Have we talked about the Microsoft Update Catalog?
I don't think we did.
We did?
I don't think so.
We didn't. Okay. Can everybody see update history?
Yeah.
Can everyone see these KB references, knowledge base references? KB stands for knowledge base. Let's pretend that you have a host or a virtual machine that's supposed to be up to date, and for one reason or another, your network just isn't pulling it down properly. The same kind of network hiccup. The same kind of network hiccup occurs like the one we just saw when we prompted a test for the latest software in VirtualBox, right? Supposed to load, doesn't load. Has anyone ever tried to do a Windows update and says, oh, you have an update? And it starts to download and it starts to get ready, and then it just fails.
Oh yeah.
And then you do it 2 and 3 times and you're like, what the heck is going on here? Right? So you can take this on a adjacent machine if you wanted to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, because why? Your credibility is on the line. in any scenario where you discover something with network forensics, you have to be able to validate, verify, and certify, right? So you want to see if there are differences in your test gear, and if there are, you want to be able to remediate those differences. And occasionally life is going to throw you some lemons. So if you take this knowledge base article, and I'm going to attempt to copy it. Oh, it's going to let me copy it. Yay. And I'm going to go to the Microsoft Update Catalog. Now, this is an amazing resource because it's a one-stop shop for the knowledge base references for your updates. What am I saying? If you get something that's stuck, could be a virtual machine, it's not pulling the Microsoft Update Catalog. Why? Oh, maybe the network interface is in NAT mode and it's behaving differently. Or maybe there's a problem with the hypervisor. So the translation through the network is scrambling the eggs. Or you just have a flaky network that's up and down and all around. What you're going to do is enter that knowledge base article, and then you can download the install media for your particular flavor of that. Now you'll notice this one says ARM64. Do we have any RISC processor folks? Do we have anybody that would run Windows on RISC-based processors? Okay. What's the most popular RISC-based CPU, high performance, that's in circulation right now, and the manufacturer is bragging like hell about it?
Is it Apple? Is it the M1 chips?
Uh-huh.
the M
It's
chips.
the M series chips. Now, that's an oversimplification of the scenario, but essentially the M series chips from Microsoft are highly optimized for performance, and there's a smaller instruction set. We would call that a RISC-based chip. The Intel version is based on a 64-bit CPU, just like the other, but it's an x64 Intel-based system, right? And you'll notice here that this cumulative update is for Windows 11 version 22H2. Now, before I download this and load it on my Windows 11 version, what should I do before I install this?
Run a hash on it.
Well, you would want to run a hash on it. Yeah, that's probably a good thing. And there is a website with Microsoft where you can get hashes. But if I go to my system and I scroll down here, oh, 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 everybody see this?
Yeah.
Now, it just so happens that I belong to the, well, it's a developer's version of the operating system community. You get new releases of Windows. You get to be their guinea pigs, and they have different levels of pain for operating system updates. And why am I telling you this? In a production environment, you would probably not install the Windows operating system so that it is based on, let's do this full screen. It's not showing here on my screen because I'm actually in it. But on this screen for many Microsoft client OSs, Windows 10, Windows 11, there's a link to participate in the preview program, and you get early releases on the operating system. And so one of the things you want to be sure of is that in a production environment for network forensics, you're probably not going to want a part of that. Or if you are, you're going to want to have that on an isolated system. And that gives you a chance to kind of preview, right? What's coming around the curve. And that's one reason why I find this particular program so helpful, because I get to look ahead of the curve to see what operating system releases are coming out. In fact, it used to be that Macs and Linux were the only operating systems that offered the latest, greatest version of the operating system to their owners free of charge. So it was worth the price of admission to pay more for a Mac because you were getting free upgrades in the operating system for life. And if you look at the different versions of the OS X operating system, they're actually pretty hilarious. You know, for a long time, they had different cat versions. They had Snow Leopard, and they had Panther, and they had Lion, and they had all these different versions of Tiger, right? And then they flipped to a theme that was all about different Californian geographical locations like Mojave and Yosemite. And does everybody understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. When you're for Windows client operating systems, what you'll have are what are called feature updates. When you see an update that appears on your screen and you see the word feature in there, that's an entire kernel replacement. What you'll end up with is a different kernel of the operating system when you finish, and those are available even to standard versions of the operating system. For the client operating system. And when you finish loading it, at the very least, your OS build will change. When you see the OS build number associated with a version change, see where it says Windows Feature Experience Pack?
Yeah.
So you'll see something about a feature update. That's Microsoft's code name for, oh, we're forklifting the kernel of the operating system right out of there. And we're giving you a refresh. We're basically giving you a whole new operating system. So why am I sharing this with you? It is important for you, if you're going to be able to validate, verify, and certify, not only on your host operating systems, but also on your VM operating systems, the OS build numbers and version numbers. And if you ever perform a manual update because something gets stuck, you want to be sure to include the correct version. And you'll see here, oh my gosh, here's one for 23H2. And had I downloaded this one, 22H2, and I had the download, that's 736 megabytes, right? That's a pretty chunky, that's almost a gigabyte. But it's the wrong kernel, right? In an ideal world, it's supposed to pop up and say, oh, this update isn't for your system. And that would be your first clue. Doesn't always work like that. Sometimes you hose the operating system and it crashes. All right. Any questions, comments, observations about the Microsoft Update catalog, build numbers, version numbers, all that kind of thing?
No.
Let's go to virtualbox.org. And what's going on here? Bad gateway.
The website was down for me too.
Holy buckets. Maybe VirtualBox is having problems. Maybe VirtualBox is having issues. Okay. Well, to be continued. What do you do when you see something like this? What's your natural instinct?
To go back.
Yeah, mine is. You were seeing this warning because the site does not support HTTPS? What? But I just put HTTPS in here. HTTPS, I did it manually. You saw me, didn't you? Let's see if we go to the alias. Nope. Okay, obviously VirtualBox is having some issues. Okay. All right. Let's go back and finish in the next 2 minutes our review of so you may have, to summarize, you may have a Windows update that is available if you're on a different OS build and version of Windows 11 than I do, or Windows 10. But there, if you see Windows version 22H2 and for Windows 10 and Windows 11 22H2, and it's the same version, would that be the same kernel or the same build? Yes or no? What would you think? Same kernel, yes or no? Windows 10 22H2, Windows 11 22H2. Same kernel, yes or no?
I would say probably the same kernel.
Same version, not the same kernel. The builds for Windows 10 and Windows 11. Windows 11 is an operating system that is supposed to be radically more secure. Yeah, that was kind of a trick question. If the version is the same, you would think that there are a lot of similarities. There's actually more similarities between the kernels of a client and the server than the version of a server and the version of client operating system than different versions of the same client operating system. Okay, what I would like to do is revisit this very quickly. And as soon as this is up, I'm going to point out a very important command that I want you to run on your Kali box. Did we talk about the guest editions and what you have to do to load it?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Did we talk about how it's a little tricky in Kali and you actually have to do something slightly different?
That I do remember.
You do remember or don't remember?
No, I don't remember.
Okay. So I have it in bridge mode now, yes? How many of you got very little in your file for the natted version of your Kali trial on Friday?
I did.
You got very little?
Yeah.
And was there anyone else?
Yeah, me too.
Okay. One of the things that we want to differentiate is that when Kali is operating in what I would refer to as stealth mode or silent running mode, meaning it's hiding behind the MAC address of the host, you have it in natted mode, right? If you have your network interface in natted mode, one of the things that you'll notice is that the custom MAC address still presents. So if I go here and type in ifconfig, one of the things that you should have noticed is that whether you're dealing with a local network address or you're dealing with a natted address, the Ethernet MAC address on layer 2, presents the same way. Now, because you're natting, Nmap will misfire and you'll get strange results. In some cases, you'll get 256 hosts are up, but you won't get any detail. In other cases, you won't get what you need, and that's really frustrating. So I wanted to share with you that if you experienced a distinct difference in the output between your guest map bridged and guest nmap natted, that's usually the case. However, Kali can still operate behind a veiled curtain. It can still run silent. There are many other there are many other network, right? There are many other network options within Kali that will function properly when it's in natted mode. And on Wednesday, what we're going to do is suss out the distinctions between natted mode operations and bridged mode operations, and how that presents with Wireshark when there's other network monitors running Wireshark on that network. But one of the things that you'll notice is that the MAC address for the Kali packets will present at the same time. So does anyone know what the fourth dimension is? In science and in math, we talk about 3 dimensions, and the first 3 dimensions are length, width, and height, or X, Y, and Z axis. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Okay, the fourth dimension, philosophically, and in terms of physics, what is the fourth dimension? It's time. So to hit the fast forward button, what you'll notice is that your network results will reflect at the same time the Kali MAC and the host MAC with the same network address on layer 3. Where a Kali machine running in bridged mode will present its MAC address, its unique MAC address, on a different IP address at the same time. The telltale sign is a Wireshark trace, a Wireshark capture that shows the MAC address of the Kali and the MAC address of the host active simultaneously across the same network streams, right? Same layer 3 address, different layer 2 addresses. And if you let's look at what I got, and then we'll close. And thank you for your patience. I promise I won't do this anymore. So guest map, and it's natted. That's all I got. I got a very short line. When I was working with it earlier, I noodled with natted network, and I tried to rig the network interface a little differently. You could do some independent research if you're interested in the cyber concentration. There are some interesting things you can do with route creations where you add a route, where you could, in theory, change the way the packets are flowing, even for a natted virtual machine. And hypervisors will work differently. So this is VirtualBox. You'd want to be able to see what happens when you go from external to internal network interface mode. But there is one more thing I wanted to share with you that I thought would be worth sharing this morning. The snapshot feature. One of the things that we want to be able to do is change control. It's change management, right? Version control and change management. I'm sorry, version control and change management. As you're rolling through so many different OS versions, application versions, hypervisor versions, and you have things you have to validate, verify, and certify. One of the silver bullets or kryptonite that you can apply in your world is that for a virtual machine, you can take snapshots. You can roll forward and roll back to different configurations in time, that fourth dimension I was talking about. And that's one advantage you don't have with the host system. Okay, on Wednesday, we're going to finish our comparison of Nmap outputs, and we'll also review the different options for Nmap scans. Stay tuned, and thank you for joining us today. Are there any questions, comments, observations?
No, sir.
Additional credit. I will post additional credit for the individual on Wednesday who catches me forgetting that the first order of business is this matter of version control right here. We want to walk through the special accommodations you have to do to load the guest edition drivers inside Kali compared to everything else. And there is one other thing that I want to bring up, and this one's a doozy. Some of you, did anybody install Kali with the ISO instead of the virtual machine?
I had to do the ISO, yeah.
You did the ISO?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you did. Did you know that when you do this, and then you try to do this, I'm sorry, it's update versus upgrade. But let me just take the direct flight. Did any of you run up into this issue? If you loaded the appliance, you would see this. The appliances have a nasty habit of kind of locking down the operating system so you can't update. Meaning a Kali appliance is a snapshot. It's a hard-coded version that's stable, and they don't allow updates like they would for a standard installation using the ISO. So snapshots are supposed to be kind of like static, pre-configured, unchangeable. They're supposed to give you some immunity from change management issues, right? Version control issues. Any questions, comments, observations? I know we really got to go.
No.
Okay. So quite a bit to cover there on the landscape, but we'll wrap it up on Wednesday, and then we'll step ahead and finish our review of Module 1 material and concepts and methods, and then get you ready for your first assessment. Woohoo!
Fun.
See you then.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us.